Hello, friends. This is Anthony Crane with Pocket Coach, and today we are going to be looking at the working agreements experiment. So let's get my timer going. And I think it hid behind my face. There it is. Okay, we'll get that going. Move this over. All right. So working agreements experiment. Here's the deal. Working agreements is a way for teams to become higher performing. It's a fantastic way to increase team performance. So first, let's look at the problem. It's difficult to talk about perceived team weaknesses. People don't like hearing criticism sometimes. People are embarrassed, whatever. We need a way to talk about our team weaknesses without it being too hard on us, right? Hypothesis. The working agreements experiment is a low conflict way to suggest better ways to work together and therefore accelerate our team performance. The time frame on this one, again, about 6 weeks. Ask persevere every sprint and see how you're doing. Assuming you have a 2-week sprint. And then typical outcomes. The team should become higher performing due to quickly addressing their team anti-patterns and experiments to improve themselves, right? So you should see those teams that start doing the working agreements anti-pattern, the working agreements experiment really start to accelerate. Skill growth, you have created or adopted working agreements in order to accelerate your team. So once you've actually created some or adopted some, you can start to give yourself skill growth. Again, that's if you're tracking your skill growth in the Pocket Coach app. Okay, so I have a little asset here that I created just for today. Let me move my little face over and zoom in a little bit so you can better see what's going on here. Okay, so here's the deal. Purpose. Why do we have working agreements? Bottom line, to accelerate the team based on anti-patterns. So if we don't like something about ourselves, we need to be able to say it without people getting upset. So here's an example. We keep starting 10 minutes late every day. Can we create a working agreement to improve this, right? It's a lot of we are starting 10 minutes late, even if you're not one of the ones who you think is the reason it's happening. Can we create a working agreement together? And then you can propose one. You can say, I have a working agreement that I'd like to propose. Sometimes I'll write them up and then show them and say, what do y'all think of this one? Other times I'll come with a blank page and say, hey, can we create one together? I like to have a starter in my back pocket, even if I don't use it, because that'll accelerate the blank page syndrome. So whatever problem your team is facing, one possible way to improve that is through a working agreement. Other ways are to run other experiments. Okay. Now, working agreements can be proactive or reactive. I am not a fan of proactive working agreements. I think that they assume the worst. So when someone gives me a working agreement at the beginning of a class and says, embrace the art of the possible and don't interrupt others and don't answer your phone, I'm like, I'm a professional. I know not to do those things. So honestly, when people give me like what I think are obvious working agreements, it really does kind of, it insults me. So maybe everyone else is a little more relaxed than I am, but I do not like being told things that I think are obvious. And a lot of these proactive working agreements do that. Reactive is evidence-based. Hey, we've been 10 minutes late a lot. Can we do something about that? So I prefer to use reactive working agreements over proactive because I think it's evidence-based and therefore not theoretical, and I'm not insulting anybody with some theoretical nonsense that we would never have happened. Okay. Retrospectives. That's a different recording you guys will be able to watch. But in the past, I've always said in my retrospective, at the end, you should have a list of actions. I have matured from that. I think I've matured from that. And now I say at the end of every retrospective, you should have one of two things or both. You should have new experiments that you want to try to make yourselves better in the next sprint. Experiments, right? Or 2 new working agreements that you want to try, which are a minor experiment, if you will, a new working agreement that you want to try for the next. So working agreements are an experiment because you think they're going to make you better, but you're not sure if they will. They're just a very light touch experiment. And working agreements don't have to be documented. You can have verbal working agreements and documented ones. We have both kinds, right? So some of our agreements are just so obvious, we don't have to write them down. Others are a little bit like, how do we want to label our stories to get to our stand-up meeting really well? That one, we probably write it down because we have like 7 different label types, right? And we have new people doing this. So we have verbal and non-verbal working agreements. I'm sorry, verbal and written working agreements. Okay, every agenda is a working agreement. So when you say this is our sprint planning agenda or our mob time agenda, that's a working agreement. Think about it. It's an agreement on how to get to that time box. Make them better as you learn. Understand that they're, for me, we always put candidate agenda because we know we're going to learn and grow. Throughout the Agile Shoebox, which is what I call this Pocket Coach kit, the whole thing, because of Shuhari. If you haven't seen the Shuhari video, that'll explain why we call it the Agile Shoebox. Throughout the Agile Shoebox, we have many working agreements. 3 examples here. The Shuhari coaching agreement, that's a working agreement. The time boxing working agreement, that's a working agreement. The contradictory advice pattern, that's a working agreement. So these are some that you'll find in the kit. But if you think about it, every experiment in this kit is a working agreement experiment, right? A way to work that you're not sure if it'll help you or not, and we need to pivot or persevere on. So there you go. That is our 5-minute video on working agreements. Definitely leverage those if you want to see your team accelerate. So hopefully you found that video helpful. My name is Anthony Crane with Pocket Coach, and we will see you on the next video. Thank you.